is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we're back this time to make the bumpers for our robot. You're gonna need a whole bunch of extra parts, but the big thing is there is a bumper mounting kit that was in the blue Andy Mark chassis box. And I think there was some of the bumper material in your kit as well. But you'll need some extra things that weren't in the kit of parts, mostly the plywood. That's what we're gonna work on first. You'll need 3/4 inch plywood. And like I said, when we were making the electronics panel, the nicest plywood you can get is gonna make your life easier. All right, we're gonna get started on our bumpers, but before we do, let's give another special thanks to Argosy, First, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School for hosting our studio. Before we start, I would definitely want to remind you that you're going to need 2 sets of bumpers, one red and one blue. Now there are some other options like building a set of bumper covers that can flip colors from red to blue. And there's some instructions out there from other teams who have done that in the past. But what we're going to do in this video is build one set of just one of the colors of bumpers. I think red, because that's the fabric I have left over. You'll need to repeat this process and do everything a second time with blue. So when we go through and we start cutting sections of bumper backing material, you're going to need twice as many as I cut in this video. So we know for bumpers, all of the bumper heights are going to be 5 inches. So we're going to need a 5-inch strip of wood on this side, a 5-inch strip of wood for our little, little cutoff in the front, a little stretch for the other side, and then we need stretches that are going to go along the sides to the back. So there is a list, if you're following along with the KitBot instructions, there is a list of the sizes to cut things to. And you can do that, and it will probably work. But I do like to check just my robot to see what sizes my robot is and make sure that it matches up with those numbers. So on the front, I think we tried to cut these down to 5 inches, and mine is pretty close to 5 inches. And what's going to happen, though, is because we're going to have another piece of wood that comes this way into it, we need it to stick off the outside edge by 3/4 of an inch, or the thickness of the plywood that we're using. So that second piece of wood will also be covered up. So because my piece here is really close to exactly 5, that means we're going to need 5 3/4. So I will just make a note of that. I think that matches what was on first cut list. So I need 5 3/4 inches. And we're going to need 2 of them on the front for blue and 2 for red. So you will need 4 total, which is, I think, the same number that's on the list. So far, we have no discrepancies. The next one that I'll look at is the back. So all the way across the back of the robot, or the front of the other side of the robot, we tried to cut this to 26.5. Mine is basically 26.5. So I'm good with that dimension, which means my number is, again, going to match what is in the instructions. So we need 26.5. But again, there's that extra piece of wood coming down this side that we have to account for. So it's an extra 3/4 of an inch for this side, extra 3/4 of an inch for that side. So 26.5 plus 3/4 plus 3/4 is going to be 28 inches. So I know that we need a 28-inch piece, and there's going to be 2 of those. You need 1 for red and 1 for blue. Okay, and then the side. So the side is basically going to go from the front edge to the back edge. And if we measure that, it is going to come out to, so I am 26 and not quite 3/8. So 26 and maybe 5/16. Which I think, again, mine lines up with the number in there, which it should, because we're using the holes that are pre-spaced. So if this piece needs to be 26 and 5/16, one of the notes that First is giving is when we cover the bumpers in fabric, there's going to be a bunch of extra fabric on the end here, a bunch of extra fabric on the end here, and the same thing on the front side. So the recommendation is to cut this side about 1/4 of an inch shorter so that when all that fabric is stacked up, they still fit together nicely. And if there's a tiny, tiny gap, it's not going to hurt anything because nothing's going to be able to get through that gap. So we also need, I already forgot the number, 26 and 1/16, I think is what we're looking for. So 26 and 1/16 inches. And you'll need 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 for each side for red, 1 for each side for blue. So you will need 4 of those. All right, so again, I'm going to only cut half. I'm going to be able to get all of half of them out of one, I think, 2x4 piece of plywood. So it's 24 inches wide. That means I can do a 5-inch strip that's 48 inches long, and I can do 4 of those. So I can do 4 5-inch strips out of this wood. And it's 48 inches long, which means the 26 and the 28 cannot be doubled up, because 26 times 2 is 52. It's already too long. We only have 48 inches. But the 5 3/4 will fit on the end of anything. We have plenty of leftover on the end. So I can do 4 strips, and I only need, for me, 3. You're going to need 6 strips of 5-inch. So again, you'll probably need 2 pieces of 2x4 or 1 piece of 4x4. All right, next step, let me get rid of the robot, and then we'll start marking up our plywood and chopping it down to size. So like I said before, our goal is basically we're going to rip a 5-inch piece off of this board. Then we're going to mark and rip another 5-inch piece off of the board, and another one. Actually, I guess we could mark both sides and do both ends. That probably is slightly better, because we'll get 2 clean edges, and then we'll have another couple cuts in the middle that are going to be a little bit less helpful. I actually only need 3 cuts, but you might as well do all 4. OK, so we need a 5-inch strip. This 5 inches, again, I mean, like, try your best to be accurate, but if it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, it's still going to work out OK. And you can do this in a few different ways. When we were marking the other board up, if you remember, we would measure in to the number that we wanted, say 5 inches, and make a mark. And then we could come down to the other side somewhere, get 5 inches, and make that mark. And then we could connect the lines or use the big T-square to do it. And that works pretty well. There's another trick, though. If you do have one of these builder squares or quick squares, so this has some measurements on the side, and that's measuring from this inside edge of the square. And there are these little like ridges here. And the idea is you can actually put a pencil in that ridge, and that will give you that dimension. So if I take this to the edge of my material here and start over in the corner, if I put my pencil right down into the 5, the ridge next to 5, I can actually just slide this all the way across the entire piece. And that is 5 inches all the way through. So I've got my line. I guess I can take this one all the way to the end there. So that is the fastest way to mark 5 inches. So, and it's going to be pretty accurate, especially if the edge you're marking off of was like maybe the factory edge, or you made a really good clean cut. If it's on an angle, you might have to adjust things a little bit, but that would still give you, this would still give you the best 5 inches I think that you can do. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now, if I want to use the same technique we used before, which is to have the track to guide my saw, then I need to have another mark, let's see, so we're going to be cutting, so on this case, we're going to be, we need to account for the saw blade. So I'll show it again, but on my saw, from this outside edge, which is parallel to the blade, to where the blade starts cutting is 1.5 inches. But then to the other side of the blade, right, because my blade needs to clear, it's like a little less than 1/8 of an inch. It's like maybe 3/32. 3/64. Whatever. It's going to be a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch. So what I actually need is another mark. So we can have this line to know if we're cutting straight. But I need another mark that is beyond the 5 by 1.5 inches, so 6.5, and then a little less than 1/8 of an inch. So I'll make my mark here right about at 1/8 of an inch. And if I make one mark on this side of the board, I can do the same thing on this side, and then that I can use to guide to line up my fence. So 5, 6.5, and just under that 1/8 that's there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see, where can I cut this? I guess we're going to have to cut this on the back side of the table here. So we'll kind of center ourselves up. And in this case, this piece is 48 inches long. So I need something that's longer than 48 inches to be able to clamp it down and have the saw still be able to fit. So I just have a random piece of aluminum box that I had around that I'm going to use as my guide. And of course, right, like if you have a table saw, cut this on the table saw. They cut very straight. and rip through. If you had to do this on a vertical bandsaw, you could do it. You probably need an extra person to help hold it. If you have a jigsaw, if you just have a handsaw, then just do your best to stay on the line and cut all the way through. So use whatever tool you've got. They're all going to work out pretty well. And then we're going to go ahead and start clamping this down where it is on the line there for me. We'll do the same thing on this side. So that one looks good. This one moved, so we'll adjust. Clamp down. All right, and then I always like to check quickly at the beginning. Well, all right, that clamp is still hitting, so I got to move that clamp off the end of the table. Hopefully without moving where it was clamped. That looks like we're there. All right. So we'll look kind of at the blade to see, does the blade kind of look like it's going to be in the right place? Does it look like it's going to clear the line? That looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and do our cut here. All right. First one's done. Let's see how we did. Okay, I'm just under 5 inches on that side, and almost exactly on 5 inches on this side. So I cut a little bit on an angle, but we're pretty close. We're within a 1/16 of an inch all the way along the board. So that is one piece that's done. Kind of set that off on the side. We now need to repeat that process for our second row of stuff. While we get coated in the sawdust here. Okay, so again, I'll get myself a good line at 5 inches by putting the pencil in the 5-inch spot and sliding it across. Might have wanted to clamp the wood down because it was spinning on me there, but I think I kept it on the line. Okay, and then I need that extra mark that is 1.5 plus, this time I'll go all the way to 1/8 because I got just short on the one side. So we'll go just about to that spot. All right. And then we'll line up our guide again. Right on my line there. Right on the line there. Let's see if that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. All right, let's go ahead and cut this one. All right. Once again, I am exactly 5 inches on one side and just under 5 inches on the other. So that's going to work, but I didn't learn my lessons, it would seem. And I need one more of these. You need to keep going, right? You need 6 of these total, I believe. But since I only have to make one set of bumpers, all right, let's get that quick square back here. Just because it was shifting around on me last time, let me just throw one clamp on there. That should be enough. All right, so 5 inches, put it in the 5-inch spot, and okay, well now that clamp is in the way, so we'll just, finish out without it. All right. And then I'm going to mark for my track. And mark on this side for my track. And get our guide bar, line it up, and let's get our clamps on. Seems on. That seems on. Board seems clamped. All right. And let's do our third one. All right, how we looking? Just under 5 inches and 5 inches. All right, I did the exact same thing to all 3 boards. They are all definitely close enough. All right, yeah, I gotta take a break and vacuum up some of this sawdust, and then we'll come back and chop these boards to length. Okay, so now we have our 5-inch wide boards, and from my notes, we need, basically, on each of the 3 boards, we're going to do one of the long lengths. And then we can do our 5 3/4, the short ones, anywhere we want. OK, so guess it doesn't matter which end we measure from. We're going to have one that we want to be 28 inches. That's the longest one. So I'll mark a 28-inch here. 28. All right, and again, this one, if you're a little bit off or not, it's going to be OK. This is the scrap side. I'm going to throw a couple X's on there. And I can use my quick square here to bring that line all the way across, just so we have something to watch as we're cutting. But then, of course, I need to mark a little bit farther in order for the saw. I'm going to cut. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna cut the. I'm not gonna bother putting the guide on. That's a shortcut. We'll be all right. So that's the first one. Then what I can do from the other end is we need 5 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so 5 3/4. 5 3/4, right about there. Just throw another mark on so I can compare. Well, that's that. No, let's just ignore that one. 5 3/4, all right. And so we can take that line all the way across. Okay. And then after we make these 2 cuts, we could use the rest of this board for 1 more 5 3/4. Actually, you probably could get 2 more 5 3/4 out of this. It looks like. And I could just, use the tape measure in my hand. Yeah, you could get 3 of your 5 3/4 out of this if you wanted. If you're trying to save wood and keep the biggest pieces of wood available to you, that's the way to do it. I'm going to try to save a little bit of time right now, so I'll mark another 5 3/4 on my next piece as well. So we'll move this one out of the way. And we can label too. So this one is going to be, this is our 28-inch piece. This is a 5 3/4 piece. Okay, and then on the next one here, we need 2, or in your case 4, right? Because you need twice as many. You need 2 that are marked like this. I only need 1 because I'm only making 1 set of bumpers. This one is 26 1/16 of an inch. So let's measure out to 26, and 1 line past it is the 16th. All right. 26 1/16. And let's transfer that line all the way across. Let's move over until it actually lines up. That looks good. And then since we're here, we'll go to the other side, and we'll do the 5 3/4 off the other side. So 5 3/4. Looks good. Okay, and then, so yeah, we can label it again. So this is 5 3/4 inch. This is 26 1/16. So that one's set. And now all we need is 1 more 26 1/16. And it would be super nice if we could get 52 1/8 inch long pieces, and then we would have no waste. But unfortunately, this one, we're going to have almost half of this piece left over when we're done. All right, so we're going to go to, once again, 26, and the first line past is a 16th. Give myself 1 more reference point here. Line it up. Looks good. And this is 26 1/16. Okay, 26 1/16. They are the same, so I will believe that I measured well. Our 2 5 3/4 are the same, so I'll believe we measured well. And then the 28 is 28. All right, I'm pretty happy with all these measurements, so it is just time for us to start cutting. So let's start with this one. 26 1/16. I'm going to clamp it down to the table. And then let's just cut through. All right, that is 1 down. Do a little 5 3/4 on the end of this piece first. And I guess I will try to hang on to this, so, well, let's get started first, where I can see what I'm doing. All right. Yeah, this is good. Do it this way. Clamp it up. Okay. 2 26s. Next up, another 5 3/4. Seem about the same. That'll do. Let's flip this one around. No, let's not flip this one around. Let's just slide it over. All right, and our last cut, or half of your cuts, because you have to make 2 sets. All right, that is 1 set of bumper backing wood cut. I'm going to go ahead and grab my sander here. Again, you can do this by hand. I think there's some cheap like blocks you can get that you can wrap the sandpaper around, and that works pretty well too. But you know, if you have the power tool. All right, I am going to finish up the whole stack of wood here. I don't think you have to watch me sanding. We'll be back when everything's ready to go. All right, all sanded. We also brought out some of the hardware that I'm going to use next. The 28-inch board is done. We don't have to do anything else to that until we start wrapping it. So I'll move that one off to the side. The 26 and 1/16 boards and the 5 3/4, we're actually going to connect them together this way to make L's, 2 L's that are going to be the front and side bumpers on our robot. And then the back is just going to be by itself, that 28-inch piece. So to connect these together, there's a few different ways you can do it. I went to the hardware store, and they sell some brackets like this. And we have like a longer edge and a shorter edge. That's going to help it go around the corner. So if you put the short edge on the side that is sticking out, then the longer edge, right, where this one is going to hit into that piece of wood, into the side of that piece of wood, the longer edge then will go past the edge of the first piece of wood and give us some holes that we can drill into the second piece of wood. So these ones are pretty cheap. It's $1 or $2 a piece. There are probably better ones that I know Andy Mark sells some that are a little bit thicker metal and that are a little bit taller as well. So those are probably better than these if you've got a little bit extra money and some time. But these will work. Because these are maybe a little bit weaker, I also like, when we come together in the corner, I like to take some of these other corner brackets and put them on the top and on the bottom. We do have to be careful, though, when we do this because it is easy when you're attaching stuff to the side of the plywood to just split the plywood apart. So we're going to have to drill a pilot hole, and I'm going to tighten the screws in by hand just so that I can feel any issues that might be coming along with that. So we're going to basically make 2 corners. You're going to make 4 corners because you need a set for red and a set for blue. Okay, so the first one that I think we can attach is this outside bracket. This is going to do a good job of helping to hold everything square. And we can actually attach it just onto one side first, our choice of which side. So I'm going to go ahead and just eyeball it to the center of this piece of 5 3/4 wood. And if I stack up some of my scrap wood, I can actually just have everything sitting here where we're going to work on it. And you could clamp this if you wanted to. You could go ahead and clamp this in place. That would be probably a little bit safer. But because we're going to be drilling the hole into wood, I'm not super worried about things moving. And then we'll add the screws one at a time to hold it in place as we go. So when you do some wood screws, there are a bunch of these that came with the bumper mount kit, but we need those to attach the brackets to the bumpers that are going to mount. So I bought some extra ones. They're number 8 by 3/4 inch wood screws. And can't really do much than 3/4 of an inch because our piece of wood is 3/4 of an inch. So if we go much farther than that, it's going to stick out the other side, and we don't want that. So for number 8 screws, I don't know what the actual specific size that we need to pre-drill, but we need to pre-drill a hole first. And I think 7/16 has worked for me, but if you do 7/16 and it feels too tight or feels like it's splitting the wood, then I would move up to 1/8 and give that one a try. But I'm going to start with 7/16 because I think there's a little bit more meat left. The screw will bite a little tighter. So I'll put the 7/16 drill in the drill bit. And then I guess I want a little bit of a gap here, so when I drill through, I don't immediately drill into the piece of wood below. And so let's see. The first hole I'm going to drill is this top hole, and that's kind of in the gap here. Probably you should use the scrap pieces and not your other bumper pieces when you're doing this, but it'll be fine. All right. When you do the drilling here, try to get the drill bit in the center of the hole when you start drilling. Okay, and we're through. And then I'm going to grab one of these wood screws. And like I said, I'm going to tighten these in by hand because I don't want to either strip the hole out or split the wood by over-tightening it. That seems good. It got tight. I'm happy with that. All right. And now I'll kind of, how do I want to do this? All right. I've changed my mind. I'm going to go ahead and just clamp this off the side of the table. Then I can drill and screw all of the things in without worrying about being careful to not drill too far and hit other things. I think this one I actually scuffed my other board. I didn't really drill into it, but I did chip the top board a little bit. So we'll switch over to this plan. Make sure those holes are off the edge of the table, though. Otherwise, I'll have wasted my time doing this. All right, and pick another one. Try to get in the center. That's less scary. And let's put a screw in. All right. Another one. Good, and our last one. All right. Move this one off to the side. Bring in my other 5 3/4 board. And my other bracket. And again, I'm going to have the short side on here. Make sure we're off the edge of the table. Kind of line that up in the center, pick a hole, and go for it. Now I would definitely, after you drill the first hole, put the first screw in, just in case it moves on you. If you drill all the holes and it moved, the holes might not all still be lined up. Once you have your second screw in, it really can't move anymore. So you can probably drill the last two at the same time. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and drill both of these and then put a screw in for both. Okay, and this is my last 5 3/4 board. You should have 2 more for your second set of bumpers. So you might as well just do all 4 of them at once here. Okay, that's good. All right, next up, we got to figure out how we're going to then take this board and get it attached to one of our 26 and 1/16 boards. And I think what we're going to look to do is, I left a little bit of a gap on that one. I think my cut might actually be a little crooked. That's okay, though. It is going to be fine. So for this one, what we need to do is basically we're going to pull it in until it's flat on the end of the board and bring this down. Again, I'm going to line up the wood now. The bracket goes where the bracket goes, but I want my wood to be as even as possible. So I'm feeling the edges of the wood to line them up. And then in this position, I'm going to see if I can get a clamp on here to help hold it in place. So that seems like a good one. And then we'll get a clamp from the other side. Of course, if you just have C-clamps, those will work fine here. And that seems good. We've got a couple holes that we can drill. And then we'll set this down off the end of the table. I guess really quickly before we do that, we can sneak our square in and see how we're doing. All right, so we can check how the square is looking. And the bracket should do the job for us. This looks pretty close. If it's off by a little bit, that's probably OK. But this bracket should be square, so it should guide everything else to being square. If it's not, you can try to bend the bracket a little bit. But mine looks good. And then I guess I'm going to grab one more clamp to hold this down while I drill. All right. So we'll get to the holes we can get to here. And again, always going to kind of fill at least the first 2 holes as I drill them, because things can move, stuff can happen. And the other one, let's try to get in the center of that hole. Okay, and then if you have to remove the clamps now, that's fine. We have the 2 screws holding everything in place. So we'll go ahead and drill the last 2. Add our screws. Seems good. All right. It is going pretty well. OK. And then let's go ahead and add the top and bottom brackets that I was talking about. Now, if yours feels sturdy enough, you can stop there. I think because this is really thin wall metal, like it's pretty easy for me to still flex this in and out. And that's kind of why I like putting the top sections on. as well. If you get the bigger, thicker Andy Mark bracket, that might be enough, and you don't need to do this other step, but I think it's not going to hurt anything, and it just is going to make it a little bit stronger. So all we're going to do with this is do your best to line it up so it's on the center between the two pieces. And I think I actually will, let me take this off the edge of the table over here. Keep just the corners on. I think I will try to clamp this one on each side, just in case it tries to move on me. You could probably get away with just kind of holding this in place and drilling and adding the screws as you go. But I really want to take care to make sure that that metal doesn't stick out past the end. They make a couple different sizes of this bracket, so you might even get a little bit narrower one that gives you more room for error. But I don't want the metal to be sticking out much past the wood. But we will have pool noodles on the outside, so it's not like the metal is what's going to hit anything anyway. All right, so let's go ahead, and this one you really, really want to be in the center of the hole as much as you can. And make sure when you drill down, you drill at least 3/4 of an inch in, because that's how long this screw is going to be. And you need to have that pilot hole, otherwise your plywood is for sure just going to split apart. So when you're screwing this in, if it feels like the plywood is splitting on you, stop and go ahead and drill the one size bigger. But that did not happen. That went in nicely for me. All right, and we'll jump over to this side and get one. Again, at least 3/4 of an inch depth of drill. Yeah, so for the plywood I have, again, I got the fancier birch plywood. Seems like 7/64 is doing great. Okay, we can undo this now because those things are sort of set. They can't really move on us. And we'll drill the next one. Okay, still good on that one. Then our last one over here. Pretty good. I heard a little bit of what might have been some cracking there, but that's in. And now you can see this already. I can't really move it, so it is much stronger. I think I'm going to put one on the other side as well. You probably, again, don't need to, especially if you have the heavier duty bracket. But I think it is still nice to add. And I got them, so I might as well do it. So once again, try to line it up with the corner. And it might be on a little bit of an angle when you go ahead and clamp it down. That's okay. The screws will pull it a little bit and help out. So make sure we're even with the wood all the way around. There we go. There we go for real this time. All right, let's go ahead and clamp this side, and we're ready to start drilling again. Seems good. also seems good. And let's remove these clamps. And yeah, that one sounds like it might be cracking. So I'm gonna stop tightening it when it starts making that noise. It is all the way in. Okay, that is a corner. Now it's very, very strong. I'm very happy with that. Yeah, that is one of our side/front bumpers. I am going to basically repeat the process. We already have this far done, but I'm gonna repeat the process that I did on this one, lining this up, attaching it, and adding my top and bottom brackets. If you want to see how to do that again, just rewind the video. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. You should do it 3 more times. I'm going to do it 1 more time. And then when that's done, we'll come back and continue to the next step. All right, I brought the robot back, and we can take a look at how these bumpers are going to fit. So the first one will have a corner. There go all my pool noodles. That comes around on the side here and goes in. And this should get roughly to the end of your metal here. If it's off by a tiny bit, that's going to be OK. So that's one of our front and sides. And these are actually going to be mounted up higher than this, but I'm going to let it sit on the table for now. And then we've got our second corner on the other side. And then our long one, our 28-inch piece, goes across the back. And if you remember correctly, we left an extra gap here. So if I really pull this in all the way on that corner, there still is about a 1/4 of an inch gap on the back here in this corner spot, and in this corner spot on the other side. Because we cut this one a little short, we know that when we wrap everything with fabric, it's going to bulge out a little bit, and it's going to cover most of that gap. So if you have no gap there, you might want to take a little bit down. If you have too big of a gap there, I don't know, it's probably going to be OK. I think we're going to be able to make it work no matter what. OK, so we're looking at now how do we attach our pool noodles to this robot. And I'm going to move kind of this one out of the way for a second here. And let's rotate it. Let's work on this side first. We'll see if that falls. OK. So what we want to have happen is we need a pool noodle that comes all the way along this side like this. And it's actually going to be a 2-stack of pool noodles. So we're going to have a second one that sits on top of it. So we have a 2-high wall of pool noodles there. And then, it's hard for me to hold both, so I'm going to just show it with the one. Then, along the 5 3/4 side, we're going to have a pool noodle that attaches. But this pool noodle here has to go out to the edge of the other one. We're going to have them match together like that. And then this is going to cover the corner. And we'll have, again, a 2-stack high of that. So what we want to do is probably attach this pool noodle first to the side of our frame. And what we can do when it's attached to the side of the frame is we'll tape our double stack of pool noodles on. We'll align it with this front edge. And then on the back, we'll come back and measure with the other piece of wood that's going to be back here, our other bumper that's going to be back here, for where to cut the back off. So we can tape the full length on, then we'll cut it off. Then we'll probably use the cutoffs to do the front part of the L. OK, so let me rearrange what I got going on here. I'm going to move the robot off to the side for a second. How far can we get that over? There we go. OK. So we have this corner bumper here. And like I said, we want to, I think I need to have access to this side. So we're going to want to take our 2 pool noodles, and we're going to want to put them so they're right flat on the end here. And we want to do our best to center them up and down. Again, it doesn't have to be super perfect, and we're going to pull some fabric on that's going to do further adjusting. But in order to keep these pool noodles in place, we're going to just use some tape. So let me get a piece of tape that will wrap around. And I think the way I like to do this the best is if I start underneath, and I'm going to go not all the way to the edge. I don't remember exactly where these brackets are going to end up. So you know what? I am going to go right to the corner with this one. And I'm going to make sure that inside layer is flat. So where I put that down on the inside of this wood, make sure this sits nice and flat, because that is going to have to go in between the bumper and the robot. So if you have extra wrinkles or a fold there, try again. All right, and then let's fold it back over. Hopefully I don't get the tape stuck on itself here. Cool. I'm going to bring the pool noodles in until they're just even with the top. And feeling with your fingers is good enough. And actually, you can go back just a tiny bit. So it should be just a little bit away from the edge. And that's because, again, we're going to wrap it with fabric and stuff, and so we want to leave room for that. So leave about a 1/16 of an inch to the edge there, give or take a little. Okay, and then we're going to bring our tape up and connect it together. Now, when you put this tape on, you want it to be tight, but you don't want to be squeezing the pool noodle down. You don't want to be flattening the pool noodle at all. All right, so you can flip this around. And you can see there's just like, as I bring my finger down, it just catches on the edge before I fall down. So there's just the tiniest of lips there. All right, and then on the other end, we're going to go ahead and add another piece of tape. So let me get another strip here. See, maybe we should do the middle too. Let's do the middle too. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to go underneath. And middle is, you know, middle-ish. It's going to be fine. Okay, get that attached nice and flat. Send to the pool noodles, and then we can bring it up and over. And pretty much any type of tape is going to work here. I think duct tape works well, and it's relatively cheap. Masking tape, probably okay. It just has to hold it for a while, because again, eventually we will cover this in fabric, and the fabric will be doing the majority of keeping the pool noodles in place. All right. One thing, though, I will say is as I'm wrapping this on, I don't want to get to the back edge a second time. So I can go around the pool noodles a second time, but I don't want any extra tape on this back surface, just one layer of tape. That's the layer that, again, is going to sit next to the robot, and so we want to control that. We want to keep that as nice and accurate as possible, or as flat as possible. All right. And then let's do one more over here on the end. Kind of support it with the pool noodles so it's easier for me to get underneath. And maybe like an inch in from the edge here. All right, try to make sure they're centered. And then we will tape them on. Okay, perfect. All right, then let me rotate the robot so we get a different kind of view going on. There we go. So this is going to sit in that corner. Make sure it's all the way in the corner when you're doing this marking or this cutting. Our second bumper, or our back bumper, front bumper, whatever, our end bumper, we've been calling this the back, is going to go like this. And theoretically, right, the bumper on this one, we're going to have this bumper here stick out past the edge as well. So the front and backs are going to be sticking out past the edge, and then the sides are going to be tucked in. And I think that makes sense because you hit things from the front. So if we left the gap this way on the front, there would be sort of that gap that you could try to like wedge stuff into. Whereas if it goes all the way across, we're going to be a little bit more secure. So our goal now is to cut this pool noodle roughly at the end of this board. So the outside edge of that board. So that's about here is where we're trying to cut. And what I can do is if I take the whole thing, probably I can mark it and cut it when it's not in here. So I'm going to make sure everything is in nice and tight. And then right against the wood here, I'll just go ahead and make a mark. And then on the bottom pool noodle, I'll also make a mark. All right, so I'm going to move this bumper. Let's push the robot back off to the side. Okay, so we have our marks on our pool noodle here. And if I take the line off, that would be perfectly on the edge of where we want it to be. I want to be a little bit less, so I'm just going to leave a small gap between the line. Just like on the other side, I said we want to leave that little lip for where the fabric is going to fold over and stuff like that. So I'm just going to leave about a 1/16 of an inch in between both of those lines. And then we can, well, let me spin it around so you can see where I'm actually cutting. All right. So we want to cut not on the edge of the line, but a 16-inch back closer to the wood. Ish. And just do your best to cut these straight. And again, any serrated blade is going to work out okay. You could probably even use a bread knife for this. All right. And now I got to tip it up a little bit so I don't cut into the table. All right. And we can sort of check now if I look at it. Did I cut straight? No, not really. I could try to, trim up a little bit more where I didn't cut it quite straight. But it's pretty close. And this is one where maybe you could do it with a razor blade, but I think I'm going to be OK. And we're going to check now. So if I bring it back over to the robot here, we can reposition it where it's going to be, reposition this one where it's going to be. And I am, again, with this up and in and flush where it's going to go, and this wood up and tight, I can just feel a little bit of a lip here when I run my finger along it. So that's perfect. OK, now for this piece, we're going to come around to the front section. And we need to get a pool noodle that is kind of even on the front of our wood here. And then we're going to cut it off where the other pool noodle lines up. So just like before, what I think we want to do is if we take our stack, I'm going to use the clean edge to the inside here, because that's the one that we care a little bit more about. And let's just try to get at least one wrap of tape around here to hold it in place. And maybe two. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right, and I think if I put the tape on the table and get it not stuck to my fingers, I can take this wood board and, OK, the pool noodle rolled and ruined everything. All right, I can take this board and put it onto it where I want that tape to end up. And then I'll take the flat side, get it right on the edge. This one I'm not going to leave any extra room. I'm just going to go right exactly on the edge. And I'll push that down into the tape. And then this top one, same thing. I'll do my best to hold it right on the edge. And then we can fold our tape up and around to hold those noodles in place. And then I think the easiest thing to do is for this one. So this one, any extra, like if I cut it exactly flat, any extra material we have, fabric or whatever that's wrapping around, is going to go on the outside where it doesn't matter. So these ones don't need to be cut short. These ones, we left that small gap. So when we put fabric around stuff, it'll have room to go. Actually, and on this side, we probably didn't need the gap. Just on the other side, we need that gap. So if you just get your blade lined up with the edge of the pool noodles, you can go ahead and cut. All right, and I think, again, I got to, at some point, tip it up. So I don't get the table here. All right, and how we looking? It's pretty good. I'm still good on this side. I could maybe just try to get that last little bit. This one's sticking out just a tiny bit. But it's pretty hard for my saw to bite that last, I don't know, almost nothing amount. And these might shrink a little bit when we pull the fabric tight on them. So that one, I think, is ready to go for fabric. Okay, so set this one down out of my way. And then this one, I mean, in theory, they're the same, so I could measure it on the same side of the robot, but I'm going to go ahead and come around to the other side of the robot to do the measuring as on this one. But the first step was easy, right? The first step was to get 2 new pool noodles. And we're going to start basically on this edge, on the edge of the corner, or on or just a little shy of the corner. Get this tape started. Okay. Again, I'm just taking it up to the corner here. And then let's get our tape on. Perfect. And then 2 more tapes. One in the middle. All right, and then let me do my tip it up trick here. And we'll do one on the end. Or a little bit in from the end. Well, the tip it up trick doesn't seem so good anymore. All right, that's on. And now we're working on this side of the robot. And put our back bumper back in place. Sure we're all the way in there. And then one more time, I'm going to use the board to just sort of guide me. I'll make a couple marks on the pool noodles. Perfect. Got our marks. And we're just going to go inside of them again by about 1/16 of an inch. Give ourselves some room to work with. Try my best to cut straight. And I did not cut straight. But I think it's going to be okay. It's mostly straight. All right, and then we're going to get those 2 ends. That fell off. And we need to attach those to our other side here. So I'm going to get the piece of tape prepped. And then we're going to line these up so they are right on the inside edge of the wood. Okay, I don't want this one to double up on the back, so I'm going to tear it just short. And then we'll bring the other side in. There we go. Right, and then if we tip it up, we want to cut right against the other pool noodles. Right. And this one was hard because they try to move on me. Okay, and then we'll tip it up and try to finish that cut. All right, that looks good. Okay, so that is 2 of the sides done. Then, let's see, we're going to need to get to the back of our robot here, but in such a way that the 2 sides can also be mostly supported. All right. So this one was for this side, although it shouldn't really matter. We built them the same. And then this one, I think, was on this side. We need to just go. Okay, that is just supported on the table. Perfect. Okay, then our back bumper is going to go across here. And you can see right now that mine, when I try to bring these in, my back bumper is just a little bit too long. Like it's pushing out the pool noodle on one side or the other. So what I'm going to do before I finish the back bumper off is I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down just a little bit. Let me see if I can get a good estimate for how much that is. So it's about 1/8 of an inch, I think, for me that I have to compress stuff. Now, if you just put the fabric on and et cetera, it's probably going to work out. But I'm going to go ahead and take this one to our sanding disc or grind wheel and take the end down just a little bit to make it smaller. And as I came over here and started lining it up to grind, I can actually see, I still see a little bit of my pencil line on this one. So I think I cut this one just a little bit too long. So that makes sense that it's kind of not fitting. So we'll just grind that down until I get to my pencil line. Okay, and I think when you're doing this, if it's a little too short, that's probably better than a little too long. So that's going to be okay if you keep going a little bit longer. But let's see how we did here. If I get these pieces back where they belong, yeah, it just fits in between now. So that's going to be okay. We'll have some fabric. It'll still probably compress the pool noodle a little bit, but we can live with that. All right, so next on this piece, we need our pool noodles to stick out on both sides. So let me get 2 more long ones here. And I'll put this back where it belongs, more or less where it belongs. This pool noodle, right, has to make it all the way across to the edge of the pool noodle on this side, to the edge of the pool noodle on that side. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to get one side lined up, tape it on, and then we'll have our location to cut on the other side. So let me move this one right now so that I can keep this a little more fully on the table. Okay, that one's in. We know the position of this is going to be touching those pool noodles over there. And I bet you I can get the first piece of tape ready to go. So if we move the pool noodle temporarily, can take just the board we got, go towards the edge, and we can set that tape on there, and then slide it up, make sure everything is still where it belongs, put it into position, and now we can take our first pool noodle here and go right to the edge. That looks pretty good. We can start taping that one. And then I'll get the second one. Also right out here to the edge. Get a piece of tape to hold that in place. We can double check it. I am just a hair too long on the top one. The bottom one looks pretty good. That's going to be fine. Again, we're covering it, we're wrapping it, it's going to compress a little bit. So now that we have this sort of set to our position, I can just add probably 2 more pieces of tape to hold these noodles in place. Somewhere around there. The noodles centered, etc., etc., and I don't want a second layer of duct tape on the back, so I'll tear it off. All right, that's looking good. This time we'll try. The third one's the easiest because everything is basically already held together for you, so you can experiment with a lot of different ways to do that. All right, that looks good. And now we need to bring our third bumper back up here, align everything, and then we'll make our mark for where we want to cut. Okay, so if we have this in where it's going to go, this is in where it's going to go. So now on the outside edge of these pool noodles, I will again make a little mark. And then we can take this, and man, I don't know, the robot's taking up a lot of the room on my table now. All right. Just enough room here to cut. All right. So we've got our, a little more, there we go. We've got our lines. And remember, this one, we can be right pretty much on the line. I'm going to cut off all of the Sharpie, and that should put me right about on the edge. All right, and then one more final check here before we get to the fabric. That is pretty flat on that side. And it is, like I said, that one pool noodle is slightly over the edge on the other side, but that looks good. This is the goal for how we're going to do it. So our next step then is, obviously, if we just leave the pool noodles like this on the table, or like this on the robot, when it crashes into stuff, it's just going to start tearing away at the pool noodles. So we're going to get some heavy fabric that we wrap over it to help protect the noodles. And then once that fabric is on, then we'll get the mounts attached to the robot. And then the very last thing we'll do is you have to have your numbers on 4 sides of your robot. So we're going to paint some numbers on. If you are using a different method of attaching the numbers, if you're doing like a heat application press, you'll have to, at one step, take the fabric off, attach the numbers, and then put the fabric back on. Because I think if you have like heat set stick-on stuff where you have to iron them on, if you iron them on the pool noodle, you will melt the pool noodle. I've tried before. So in that case, you have to take it off. We're just going to use paint. Paint is probably the fastest and cheapest way to get numbers on the side. It will probably not look quite as professional as if you have some embroidered numbers on the side of your bumpers, but that's going to be just fine for what we're doing. Okay, next step then is these bumpers are ready to get covered, so I'm going to get rid of the robot, bring out the fabric. We're going to need a staple gun, and that's about it for us to do the next step. So I will be right back once we got some space cleared. For this step, you're going to need a staple gun of some kind. If you have just the manual one, that's going to work. Your arms are going to get tired. I have an electric one. There was some fabric, I believe, in the black tote. And this is from RoboPromo, but this is that heavy-duty fabric that we're going to use to wrap our bumpers with. You should have a red roll and a blue roll. If you don't, I think robopromo.com, you can buy more. You can also just buy this stuff at a regular fabric store. You can look up kind of what type of material this is. Some teams will use other types of material, like heavy-duty ripstop, some teams because that's smooth and slipperier. So if teams are trying to play defense on you, you might be able to slide off of their defense a little bit better if you have like slick fabric. But this is going to be totally fine for KitBot and what we're doing. I also got some scissors to cut the fabric, and my staples, like we're going to be stapling down with the pool noodles cushioning it. So even with electric one or a really heavy duty one, I find that I have to tap staples in a lot. So I'm just going to be prepared for that. Okay, there is no one good way to wrap this in fabric, but a couple things that we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make it so that we don't end up with lots of stacks of fabric folded over on the ends. We want to keep it as flat as possible because that's going to give us the best fitment against the side of the robot. And so we basically just have to do some kind of folding and tucking, make a little envelope fold here on this side and on this side, and we got to do a little bit of folding and tucking, maybe some cutting in the corner to get it to go around the corner. Now, I am by no means the best at covering bumpers. I also probably don't have the best technique. There are other videos out there that you might want to check out, but I think the way that I'm going to do it will work and will be relatively simple. But if you are somebody that has upholstered anything, you can probably disregard my advice and do what you know how to do. All right. So the first thing is I'm going to unroll this. And this fabric, by the way, like I think the side that RoboPromo is printed on is sort of like dull. And the other side is a much more vibrant, brighter red. And it also feels more textured. This side feels a little smoother. I'm going to have that bright red to the outside when I'm done covering the bumper. I also think that extra texture is going to help our paint stick to the bumper better and not wear off quite as easily. So I'm going to flip this over so the dull side is facing in. And then we'll place the bumper on top of that. We need a bit extra on the end. And I think you have enough extra of this material that you will be able to have a little bit of excess and trim that excess off and not have to worry about using every last inch of it. But of course, you can always get more. So we're going to have something going on this end, right, where we have to sort of fold this end in and then do some kind of tuck in and bring it up and fold the other end in. And that's going to be what we want, but we're going to try to remove some of the fabric as we do that. So I'm just really looking for having enough fabric on this top tuck in that it gets a decent amount into the board. So when we staple it, it's not just right on the edge of the board. So somewhere around there feels good. And then I'm going to just try to center this and try to make sure it stays about even running along the edge here. OK. And let's see. Do we want to start by pulling the middle in, or do we want to start by doing the end? I think we're going to start by doing the end. So the first thing that I'm going to do is pull this end in and just try to keep it so it's nice and even across, so not on a very big sharp angle. And I'm going to do one set of staples right on the edge of the piece. But I'll start with a row of staples here on the edge of the fabric. So drive those in. And this is what I mean. This one didn't go in at all. I think if I push down very hard and compress the noodles a little bit, then the staple gun works a little better. But I'm going to be doing a lot of hammering to get it the rest of the way. All right. Let's actually look at our folds here. So I think what I'm looking to do is to bring the side in something like this, like we're wrapping a present. And then all of this excess here, I probably will try to trim off. And then I'll bring this end up, and we'll get a decent looking folded corner there. But even the second layer of stuff here, I can trim off. So one of the issues that we'll run into is if I have all of this extra fabric just all bunched up right on the end here, we have this huge, thick section of fabric here, but then it's a thin section of fabric in the middle, and that means the bumper is going to not sit as well against the side of the robot, and it might be harder to get the brackets to line up to mount it. So if we go back to our little fold and tuck situation here, I know a lot of this material, right, because we're going to fold up here. Anything that's inside of here can be gone. So like a lot of this material in the middle we can get rid of. And so I think what I'm going to do is, let's be sure we don't need that material. So I want this end to tuck down a little bit before we bring the other end back over. So I think, just trying to think of how to give you the ability to kind of do it the same way I am. So I think what I want is this one to be tucked down and then to bring it back up, because that keeps the least amount of stuff. And this fabric that's here on the end, we don't really care about. And then are we good with just 2 layers of fabric? I think we're good with 2 layers of fabric. So for me, this seems pretty good with that fold. So again, I kind of just brought the ends in, folded the top down, and then we're going to bring the bottom up as snugly as we can. And then we're going to go ahead and add some staples. So I'm going to get one on the edge of this seam here. And then we're going to get the next set of staples, we're going to go kind of along the line here. But as we're doing that, we want to make sure we're kind of pulling this fabric so it's nice and tight around the corner. So if I get this pulled in tight, then I can run a line of staples along here. All right, that's pretty good. And I'm going to leave all of this loose. We're going to have to cut this because I definitely don't want the second edge to fold up on top of it as well. All right, so let's do the same folding on our other side here. Kind of shift over a little bit. Okay. So once again, I'm going to bring this end in. So it's sort of flat, almost all the way until this is a 45-degree angle. Keep that pulled in tight as well. And then we're going to just kind of fold the top down. Make sure it's below the edge of the wood, and then the top up. And you probably could, if it keeps shifting on you, like this one is trying to do to me, you probably could drop a staple into the side just to keep that from moving. All right, and then we're going to pull tight on this. Come up around the corner. And we keep pulling tight as we go down the line here. Okay. All right, that is so far so good. We'll probably cut these so they come close to each other but not touching. And then we can add some more staples. The next thing I'm going to do is bring the fabric around the other side and kind of try to find that same point, where we're going to be able to tuck it around and make that fold and that tuck. And then, so that's somewhere around here on the fabric. I'm going to go a little bit farther and then go ahead and cut a section off. Just so now we don't have the whole chunk of fabric in our way as we work our way down to the corner. All right. So next thing I just wanted to check before I go too much farther is that we're still kind of centered. And it looks like, yes, looks like it's still pretty centered. So now I'm going to take this next row of staples. I'm going to continue my row of staples until I get close to that corner. And then when we get in that corner, we're going to do some more folding and maybe some more cutting in order to clear the corner. So just keep it nice and tight. And I'm going to stop about there. So that's, I don't know, a hand's width away from the corner. Right, and then we're going to do the same thing across the other edge. So this side, the second one especially, you want to get it nice and tight when you're pulling. So the fabric sits nice and tight and not baggy. Okay, and make sure these staples are in all the way. And by the way, just about any size staple will work. I'm using 3/8 inch long staples or 10 millimeter long staples. But again, anything is going to work for you there. All right. We pick this up and start looking at our corner. One of the things with the corner is we've got a whole bunch of material. Like all of this material is sort of extra around the corner. And we can do some folding and some tucking of it, but we can also remove some of the extra material to make our life a little bit easier. And I think the way that I was shown how to do this, if I bring this edge over, so it's like this end is continuing to run flat, so I got a little bit of a fold to do that. If you feel where the corner is here, and you go away from the corner at about 45 degrees, it doesn't have to be perfect. So start a little bit in from the corner. We don't want to go quite to the corner, so I'll probably start just a little bit past that, somewhere around here. Okay, that's our first mark. Then if you bring this out and do the same thing but going the other direction, so now it looks like it's sitting flat on the other pool noodle here. Then again, I'm going to kind of feel around until I find the corner. I'm going to pull it a little bit tight so I can get to the corner. And again, I'll go in just a hair from the corner, like 1/8 of an inch. And from there, we'll go again out at about 45 degrees. And then if you connect these two, so somewhere around there to somewhere around here, that material is all, I think, extra. So let's go ahead and I'm going to cut more or less on the lines here. And it doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to leave a little bit in that corner. I don't want to cut too close to the corner. And then we're going to go across to the other side. and then out to the edge. Okay, and you can, instead of trying to do this, you can try to just do your best to fold up all of the excess. But now what's going to happen is we can pull this edge down and finish this corner all the way up until the edge here. And then it's going to be just one big tuck to bring our other corner point in line with that corner point. And then we'll come down on the other side, and we won't have a lot of that extra bunched up stuff that we had to tuck on the inside. So I think that's going to work. We need to, I guess we want to attach this side, and then we can pull tight on the other side to get it the rest of the way. So let's spin around a little bit here. Get our staple gun again. Okay, so now we can pull this all the way, or staple it all the way into that corner there. Okay, and I'm going to do one sideways to help hold that direction seam. All right, and we'll kind of get things about where we want them to be. Okay, and then, like I said, so we have this pulled out straight, tight. Then we're going to bring the other end up, looking to line those two corners up, and then pull that end down. I think I can give it just a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit more, I don't know. You can play with this as much or as little as you want to get this seam as sharp and crisp as you like. Functionally not going to make a huge difference. All right, let's flip it up on its side here. Okay. And now we can, yeah, there we go. Looks like I need to trim just a tiny bit more, or am I folding? Maybe I'm folding unevenly. Let me trim, let's see. So we're here, and I want to bring this up to that point. So that point is actually here. So yeah, I need to just trim this in a tiny bit more to about there, I think. So now when I pull it up, yes, so that crack is doing a better job of lining up, or that snip is doing a better job of lining up with where I want to be. And then this cut is just a clearance cut, so it doesn't particularly matter too much. All right, that looks reasonably good. Could probably trim it even a tiny bit more, but all right. Let's get some staples on here. So around the corner, we'll try to drop one right where it's going in. And then we'll go a couple along the bottom edge here. And okay, and you can see I still have just a little bit of stuff bending up, and I'm worried that that's going to catch. So if I just cut right down to where we left off, it's going to be a little bit uglier in the corner, but it's going to sit flatter. So I'm going to do it. All right, next, we got to do the top. And I'm going to use the same technique. So lay it out so this direction is going flat. I think part of it is if I had a fabric pen, it would be better. The Sharpie seems to bleed in a little bit. So, all right, so when this is pulled in and tight, the edge of the corner is going to be like right there. So let's 45 degrees out to the edge of our piece. And then flip it over so we're this way and tight. And the corner is going to be right there. And then we'll 45 degrees out. And then connect them together. Okay, and then let's go ahead and cut out our section of extra material here. Okay, so once again, on the long side now, we're ready to pull and staple all the way up to the corner. Okay, and then the other one, we're going to kind of get it tucked flat and then pull our other edge of where it's cut up to the corner where we left off. Oh yeah, we did better on this one. And then if we pull it tight, we'll flip this end up here. So we're going to pull it as tight as we can. Get one staple on the bottom, one on the diagonal, and then a couple more along the way. All right, and then we have way too much fabric here, but the idea is going to be, I think if we, let's see, if we tuck these ends in, we could go up this way, and I kind of like that. Alternatively, we could do this end up first, and those ones tucked. But the way we stapled it, I think it's going to be easier the other way. All right, so we have to remove some fabric now in order to get this to go. So if we tuck this up and over the edge, right, now we know exactly where it's going to be. So I'm going to leave 1.5 inches, couple inches of space. And that's where I'm going to kind of mark this one to cut. So somewhere around here is where I think we want to cut this one. So I'll do my best to eyeball that. Let's check. We can always cut more off if we have to. Now that seems good. All right, and then the idea of tucking all of this in first, I think makes some sense. But we can have a lot of extra material, but man, this is a lot of extra material. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to kind of cut this so that there will be an opening in between our two sections of fabric here. So I'll cut this one in just to leave an opening, and then I'll cut this one in the same way. Somewhere, I don't know, around here. Okay, that looks like it'll be good. And then the question is, how much more do we need to get rid of for us to be happy with how this is going to fold up? And how do we really want to fold it up? That does not look great. That looks like we'll come up a little bit short. All right, what if we, so we're going to tuck the side in. this. And we're going to bring this edge up as flat on that side as possible and over the end. And I think that's the way I want to do it. But I definitely want to lose some of these layers of fabric if I can help it, or make sure they stay off the edge of the piece of wood. Okay, so I'm just kind of like bringing the side in. I'm trying to keep this edge right on the edge of the wood here. And we'll pull that one up. That one's going to give us 2 more layers of fabric, which is maybe the best we can do in this case. So let's get a staple down this way and another one this way for now. Okay. And then definitely this stuff in the middle I'm going to try to cut out. So try to trim that back. To make room for the other side when we fold it up. Okay, and then the other side, kind of the same idea. So I want to tuck stuff in so that we can fold this over and have this edge that's folded over be flat here. And that looks good. I think I can get rid of a decent amount of kind of just this corner here. Okay, so let's roll that over until we're good. Yep. And then I'm just going to shove everything down so it's on the end, not on the inside edge, not on the top edge here. And then let's pull that up and tight. Looks like I have to fold it just a tiny bit more. There we go. Okay. Let's staple across the edge. I'm going to get one sideways here. All right, and then depending on what you have left, you could trim a little bit of this. Just get that end that's sticking out. And then I'm going to do a second row of staples on the top of this just to help make sure we hold it down. Okay, and then same thing on these other tabs that are here. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple staples to hold them flat as they can go. Okay, all of these staples felt reasonable, but now looking at it, that looks like overkill. All right, on the long side here, we got to do the same trimming trick. We need to take off a bunch of this fabric so that we don't overlap. And you could draw a line. I'm wondering if I just fold it, if I'll be able to see roughly where that fold was. That seems reasonable. Sure. So I'm going to cut down the edge here. And I can always do more if I have to. But now on this one, I'm going to cut again. So there's just some wood showing in the middle. So we are not overlapping at all. Okay, and now we're going to do a second set of staples to hold the rest of this on. And these ones can probably spread out a little more. All right, and now let's make them all flat. And that is one bumper finished. All right, so for this one, you need to make 2 red ones and 2 blue ones folded roughly like that. Again, I mean, we're just trying to keep the outside tight, no wrinkles if we can help it. All these folds in the corner, it doesn't matter. Fold it however you have to make it look good. And then again, we want the backs to be as generally flat as possible because that's going to sit against the robot. And we're going to have to add brackets there as well. So our brackets may hit some of our staples. We might have to take staples out later. That's just going to happen. All right, so this one's done. I will do my second one later. And you have 4 of those to do. We're now going to cover the end bumper here. So this is the 28-inch piece of wood. I can't remember what the end of the pool noodle length is going to be. And this one's a little bit easier, right? So we basically had that fold we did on the first end here. Any fold like that is going to work, your choice. And we just do the same thing on both ends. We don't have that corner to deal with. So this one should be easier. All right, again, I'm going to put the dull side of the fabric facing the wood. So when we wrap it around, facing the pool noodle. So when we wrap it around, the shiny side is going to be on the outside. And we'll take this kind of like, once again, to the point where we can get, decently onto the backing, the wood backing. And then I'm just going to do my best to make it even, centered, straight. If it's crooked, that's OK. You just need to make sure you have enough material for the entire time that it's crooked to still be able to cover everything. All right. And my guess is I have to put I had 2 staples left. I'm going to put a new set of staples in the staple gun. All right, so we are looking to, once again, our first step on this end was to tuck this up and attach it. So I'm going to go about an inch past the end here. And I'm trying to figure out if I'm crooked now or if my tape was crooked before. I think the tape was crooked before. OK, so we'll fold this up. Or now, if it was crooked before, I'm crooked now. Whatever. We'll be able to pull it tight. All right, and I'll do a row on the end of the wood here. Right. How did we do this? We sort of tucked it in and down. So we took all of I can do this side first. So we sort of brought this in till we sort of had that at roughly 45 degrees. We took all of the top side stuff and just jammed it in there and then brought that end up. And onto our edge here. Okay, and when it's sitting as flat as you can get it, we'll go ahead and drop a couple staples on the edge, on the diagonal, and a couple staples on the edge. And that should hold it while we get our other side set. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing on the other side, right? So to tuck this in, get it to about 45s, and then all of this stuff just gets packed down and hidden. And then we pull this one up kind of as tightly as we can. Looks good. I'm going to get the diagonal twice and the edge twice. All right, so far so good. Okay, and then we're going to kind of just continue this along. So we're going to staple along the edge. we want to leave, just to be able to make this fold, right? We want to leave something like this amount on the other side. So we have space to kind of replicate that fold. But we'll go ahead and staple along the edge. And I'll stop about there. So I've got this much room on the other side. All right, and then we're going to do the other edge. And this one is extra important that we're pulling it tight as we go. So we'll start all the way over here on the end. Get that tight. And just keep pulling tight as you work your way across. So about the same spot on the other side. Let's hammer those down. All right, and then we can sort of pull this in, and we know we want to be, about an inch past, somewhere around here. Kind of fold that back and out, somewhere around. So if I pull this tight, there's the edge of the wood, so we want to be somewhere around here when we cut it. Okay. And then our next step was to, in fact, just pull this end up. And again, this is the second end, so we want to make everything nice and tight when we do this. But we're going to pull this end up, and we're going to staple along the edge. Okay, and now for our fold again. Looks like I might have gone one staple too far on this side, but we'll see if I can still get that fold to work. I can't quite sit it down flat, but I'm still doing the same thing. I'm bringing this angle out here at about 45 degrees, and then I'm taking all of this top stuff and tucking it down in. You see, I didn't quite get, I want that angle to be a little bit steeper if I can. So we'll fold just a little bit more in. Again, shove all that extra stuff down. Pull it tight. This. That looks good. And then I think what we can do is, let's get, okay, wait, one more. Oh, yeah, wait. No, they're the same. All right. I want it to go even farther, if I can. So I'm going to just try to fold this just a little bit more by tucking stuff underneath there. And that looks better. So I'm just trying to get it to where my angle comes up close to the edge of the board. I was coming way far out last time. This time is a little bit better. I think I'm still going to be off the edge a tiny bit, but it's close. All right. Then we'll pull that tight. Go ahead and we can staple the rest of the way across this bottom row or top row. I don't even know anymore, and get a couple angle ones going as well. All right, and we got that same task one more time to do. So I'm going to work on getting a whole bunch of stuff tucked in until I'm close to 45 degrees here. Tuck the rest of that stuff down. And then bring that corner up. Okay, looks like, again, I want to get it just a little bit more tucked in. All right. That looks good. So I'll pull this as tight as I can. And we can get the corner there. If I pull as much as I can pull here. Work our way to the corner and get a couple of extra. All right, and now we have the last step of we have to go through and we have to cut these so that they don't overlap. So that fold gave me just kind of like a little bit of something to aim for last time. I kind of like that, so I'll just kind of give it a fold. I can just barely see where that fold is, and we'll just try to cut down that line. Okay, and then same thing on the other side. Something like that seems good. Okay, and now we're going to do that second row of staples just to keep this flat from getting just loose and caught on stuff. Keep it down. All right, and make sure they're all flat. Ugh. All right, so if you're hammering one and it does this and it's bent over and you can't get it to quite go flat, then we got to pull it out. So I'll just get a pair of pliers here. And usually you can just grab onto it. You might need like a flathead screwdriver to get it started, but we can take that one out. And then we'll replace it. That went in way better. But a folded over staple like that is, again, another thing that's going to get caught maybe and not let it sit flat against the robot. That is our backside bumper done. We've got one of our front corners, or front and sides. And I have one more corner to do. So I'm going to do this corner really quickly. When I'm done, we'll come back and start looking at how to mount it on the frame of the robot. You can, of course, go back and watch this one being made again as you make your second red one and two blue ones, right? 2 full sets. All right, see you in a bit. All right, we're back. We've got other bumpers on the back shelf, but we're going to get this one attached first. And like I said, it's going to attach kind of up in the air. So we have that Andy Mark box now. This is the bumper mount kit. And these long angle pieces are what are going to go on the front. So this is going to end up lining up. Wait, I can't see. There we go. On the front of the chassis like this. And the bumper then is going to be up and even with the top of that bracket. That is where that one is going to attach. OK. So in order to get this set in the right spot and marked, it looks like the instruction says to take out the bottom bolts on the front here. So remember we had these inside bottom bolts on the chassis. So we had the 2 that we did on top and then the 1 that was below here on the bottom. And so we are supposed to take this bolt out. And I think I want to be a little bit off the front of the table here. Okay, and yep. Oh, that's the wrong size. All right. Just going to take it out from this side. And I think eventually we're going to do the back too, but I'm just going to do the front two for now. And then the other side here, we also have to remove it. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go back to the side we're working on here, but we need this bracket to go in. In that bag, we have that bag of a whole bunch of different hardware. And in that bag is a very long bolt. And we can reuse the nylock nut that we just took off, but I think there are more nylock nuts in this bag. But this bolt is going to go back up through that same hole. And I need to be, I think, off the edge here. So that's going to go up through the same hole that we just took stuff out of. Let's see, how far can I get forward before it falls on me? All right. And this is going to go all the way through everything. And then on the top, that post that's sticking out, then we're going to be able to bolt in to hold our bracket. But what the instructions want us to do is they want us to take a nylock nut down here on the bottom and tighten that nylock nut as we go so that the bottom of the frame is still pinched together, but we have the extra stem up at the top. Now, these are a Phillips drive bolt, so you can do this by hand. You can take forever. And the good news is you only have to do it once. But if you do have a driver bit or an electric screwdriver, that probably will save us a lot of time. Let's see if we can get that to work. And part of the trick is keeping the, I think once we can get this bolt through the top, there we go, then you can keep pressure on the Phillips bit, and you just have to get the wrench to follow the nut as it moves down. And that's tight. All right. While we're out, we might as well do the other side as well. So we'll get started here. With the nut by hand. And again, the beginning is the hardest part because we got to get it far enough that we can, well, you know what, maybe we can just push it all the way up against the top from the beginning. But the Phillips bit, we kind of got to be pushing on it. Otherwise, it's going to try to cam out on us. So let's go up to the top here. Good. And now I can get it in the hole. So now, in theory, we can keep pressure. And the nut will move down to the bottom. All right. That was a little rough, but okay. Now, inside here, there is a wing nut. So we'll go to the side we're working on the bumper here. And there is a wing nut that we want to attach. So we're going to try to tighten that wing nut down on this inside hole here. Okay. And then if you just take the bolts we took out, that's probably the best thing to use. You can align that to one of the other holes on this bracket. And that's just going to get us centered on the two bolt holes. So I'll just drop this through any one of the holes on a line here. We'll see. I don't know if I can, how much I can. Yeah. So we got this extra bolt here. And I'm just going to kind of move to the last full hole and drop it in. So that's going to help kind of center this plate. There's some play in there, but that's okay. And then our bumper needs to go, like I said, basically flush on top here, attached to this piece. And it's really hard to drill the holes the way it sits right now. So one of the things we'll try to do is we'll try to use some tape. If you had double stick tape, that might be good. I'm just going to get some loops of this tape. And let me see, I'll get a couple of them. If I can get these on well enough, we should be able to double stick this bracket to our bumper. Then we can take it off and we can drill through to attach permanently. So I don't want to double up the tape like that. I think that's probably not a good thing. So let me get a smaller loop here. Okay, that did not get smaller, but this one will, I'm sure. All right. You kind of want to push them so they're a little bit flat, but you also don't want to touch too much of it because you want to keep all the sticky on there. All right, and then we're going to basically line up so that it's flat across the top of this bracket. And at the same time, on the back of the robot, if you just take one more of those same brackets, so we'll spin around a little bit here. If you take another one of the same brackets and just put it down on the back frame rail, or around I guess you can't quite get around those bolts the way you would want, but that height should also match. So we want to make sure that that height matches because that is the level position here. Then I'm going to squeeze that tape in as much as I can. And then we are going to loosen the wing nut. Okay, and then I can pull this bracket off. And I'm kind of holding it too, so it doesn't hopefully shift on me. All right, and that is roughly where we want this bracket to be attached. Okay, then we're going to wood screw this on, so we need to drill our pilot holes. So I'm going to switch back to that 7/64 drill bit that we used when we were building the frame originally of the bumpers. All right, and I think we can pretty much pick whatever holes we want. So there's like a billion holes on here. You can use whichever ones you want, but the general rule is if we can spread the holes out to have like 2 on this side and 2 on this side, that's going to be the strongest way to attach stuff. Now this is right on the edge here, so I probably won't use this first row of holes. So let me jump into like, I don't know, let's do this one down here. And try to center your drill in the hole. I'm going to drill that in. And then we're going to go ahead and screw in. So that bag of hardware also has a bunch of wood screws. I think these are the same as the ones that I bought to use as extra wood screws to hold the frame together. So either one is going to be fine, but we're going to just take that until it's tight. And then let's pick another one. Also, keep an eye as you're doing this. Make sure your bracket doesn't shift on you, doesn't move on you. I think I can do this one up at the top here. So I drill a little slower on the top one because I know that the drill is going to hit the upright of the angle. And I don't want to hit it hard to make it move. So that one, we drilled a little slower just to be safe. All right, that one's in and tight. And we're going to do 2 more on the other side. And again, it's kind of whichever ones you want. I'm going to go ahead and do the same, kind of the same 2. I'm going to mirror it over. Because I think these holes, my drill barely fits. So I like at least having this much space available. Okay, and if you're drilling and it feels like you hit a staple, so it's not going in or the drill shifted way off to the side when you were doing it, then just abandon that hole and drill a hole next to it. Drill any of the other holes. We have so many options. There's no need to fight it if it's not working. All right, and then the last one. Again, I'm just going to do the second one in on the top here. And this time it can get knocked off center because we've already got 3 bolts in, it can't move. Okay, screw that one in. All right, and we can sort of put this back where it was and see, how we did. It looks like those holes are still pretty lined up. Pretty happy with that. And we'll still be able to, there's some amount of play that can happen here in terms of being able to adjust the back angle. So if it's not perfectly on, we still will be able to, adjust the back as we attach our side mounts here. All right, so side mounts are next. And what we're looking for are pieces that look like this. Okay. And there are some of these quick release pins that we can use as well. All right, now these fit so that the open end, we have this open side, is going to be facing in towards the robot, and the flat side will be facing out. We're actually going to mount that flat side into our bumper wood. So on the side of the robot, if we go to the side that has all of our stuff, so our whole fuel mechanism, what we've been calling the front, we're going to take this bracket and we're going to skip 3 holes. So from this plate that's already here, from the 2 bolts that are already in, we're going to do 1, 2, 3 empty holes. And in the 4th hole, line up the first hole on the bracket. So this is going to be in the 4th and 5th holes. And go ahead and in that 4th hole, push this pin all the way down and through. It should pop out the bottom if you get it lined up correctly. There we go. All right, and then our second bracket is going to be all the way on the other end. And I'll take this other angle bracket that we were using temporarily. And this one, we're going to go right on the end. So right as close to those 2 bolts as we can. And I'm going to put the bracket through the first hole next to those bolts. Or sorry, the retaining clip. And there should be a hole here somewhere. There it is. All right, so now that it's pushed in, these can still rotate a little bit, but they're mostly in place. And we're going to kind of try to use the same trick of taping these to our bumper in order to get their location. Because it's pretty hard to precisely measure this location and drill and mount it and have the holes lined up. I think last year when we tried to do it that way, we had to go in and drill the heck out of these holes to open them up to get one to line up and fit. So let's get another, let's see, okay, that was a little, all right. Let's get another couple rolls of tape. And the stickier the tape you have, probably the better here. And I don't really want it to stick off the sides, so we'll kind of do our best with that. Tear the extra off, all right. And again, I'm going to stretch it out so it's sitting pretty flat on there, but I'm going to try not to touch it any more than I have to. Okay, and then we got to do the same thing again with the other one. Stretch it out like that. All right, now let's bring our bumper back. And we have the mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to twist the bumper in. I'm going to line it up on that wing nut. I'm going to start lowering it. And then when this front plate is flat on the bracket on the front, right, then I'm going to start bringing the side in, keeping that as flat as I can. I'll bring the side in. And then when it's in and touching, I'm going to squeeze as much as I can on the sides to hope that it hit on the tape. Now, if it doesn't stick, we can go back and we could do a second line of tape, loop of tape, just to get it wider so it'll press in more. But I've squeezed that in as much as I can. So now I'm going to pull the pins that we had in there out. And I'm going to try to come straight out first so that we are able to hopefully pull those brackets out without the tape coming off. And we did not succeed. Okay, so let's reset. Drop the pins in. That is in there a little tight, is definitely not helping too much. All right, let's get that pin set again. I'll get the back one in with the pin set again. And we're going to do a second loop of tape. So it sticks out a little farther, so hopefully we can press it on a little tighter and get it to attach. Second loop for both of these. All right, so that's definitely thicker. Hopefully we have a chance there. I'm also going to, this one just feels tight. I'm going to do a little manual adjustment here. It feels really tight on this edge where it's in there. So I'm just going to, not hard, just a little bit of some taps there. And hoping that that just bends it down the tiniest amount to hopefully get that to go free. That feels a little bit better. All right, let's try again. All right, so we're going to get this onto our wing nut, drop it down so it's flat, and then we're going to rotate that in, keeping it flat. Squeeze in at both places where those retaining pins are. Pull the pins and all right, I'm going to try to, those brackets are in there very tight. I'm going to try to reach in as it goes. So that back one here came off. Let me get something long and skinny here and see if I can get this one pried a little bit to start moving. Now maybe the ring clip in the hole will do some stuff for me if I push on it. It's so close to moving. It just won't quite come free. All right, well, we're gonna release there. Oh, it came. Hey, look at that. We got lucky in the end. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of squeeze these back on where they were. And it feels pretty good. Feels believable that that is the right spot. So we'll try, and if it works, great. So I'm going to drill through the center of the hole, through the tape and all. Okay, and then once again, we will add a wood screw. Now there are 3 holes here. We're just going to do 2, one on the top, one on the bottom. Okay, and if one of them is hitting something, then you could do the middle and the one on the top. That would still be fine. All right, so we're in there and tight. Let's get the other one here. Last hole. right, now, the moment of truth. We're going to try to put this bumper on. So again, at the front, kind of line it up on that wing nut. Move the sides around until I can push them in. And well, you know, it's close. So if I grab, I think I dropped the wing nut I was using before, but I'll grab another wing nut here and we'll tighten that down on the front. And that is hard to get to. Somebody's going to have to practice that because you're going to have to change these bumpers somewhat quickly. All right, so that's on. And now, essentially what we want to have happen is we want to be able to drop these pins in. And it's like not going to go. It'll go through the top, but not the bottom, which, you know, honestly, if you had to play a match that way, would probably be okay. The one on the back, I have to push in for sure. But that one is also not quite lined up. So we're going to make a quick adjustment on the frame of the robot. So let me switch up to, these holes were for number 10 bolts. So these holes were for that number 7 drill bit. I'm going to grab a number 7 drill bit. And it's OK to go bigger if you have to on this as we go through this process. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the hole where I want that pin to run through, which is this back hole here. And I'm just going to drill a bit to get that to go in. Okay. And it will probably end up looking a little bit, ugly. That's all right. All right, so that top one is working. I can get that through the bottom. It's a little tight, but that one kind of goes. Let me do the front one as well. So that was this hole here. Okay. And then the other thing I'm going to do before I try everything is I'm going to just drill up from the bottom on the same bracket hole just to open the bottom up so it lines up better too. So that was one of them, and that was the other. All right, so now let's see if our pins drop in. So this should be one spot for the pin. Huh. I was able to get it before, and now it doesn't want to go. I see, still a lot of force. All right, I'm going to do it again. And the bottom as well. Okay, and if you have to move up from number 7 to the next size up in whatever your drill bit set is, by all means, do it. Now, you want this pin to be, snug-ish, but if you're fighting with it constantly to get it in every time, that's a problem. So that goes in. I'm happy with that. It took a little bit of finagling, but not too bad. And up here at the front, that one also pretty good. All right, so this bumper is now attached to the robot. We're going to spin it around. We're going to line the back bumper up and attach that one next. All right, so I'm going to pull this off the edge. The back, actually, and if you wanted to, mounting both of the sides first probably makes the most sense. But I'm not going to mount the other side on camera because it's the same process. So if you do your second side and get that attached, great. It should work too if we do the back next. OK, so for the back, we have to do kind of the same thing. You remember how we have the 2 bolts up here in a line? And then there's the 1 bolt on the bottom. And then same thing on the other side. We have the 2 bolts in a line and the 1 bolt on the bottom. Once again, we have to remove that 1 bolt on the bottom. And this one is going to be exciting because the bumper or the battery mount is right here. but we'll see if we can make that happen. And just like we did on the front of the robot, where we had those super long bolts and wing nuts going all the way through the frame, we're going to do that again back here. So that's going to be a little rough on that side. This side seems much more manageable. Still going to be hard not being able to see the nut as it moves on the inside of the robot here. So this one might be harder to do with the power tools. Just keep that in mind. All right, so we have our super long bolts. And all I'm going to do is go right back through the hole that I took that one out of and start a nut on the inside. And again, this is a little rough, because with a Phillips head screwdriver, you have to push when you turn, especially if there's resistance like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of just trying to do my best to hold everything in place with my left hand. And now that I've done it enough, I think I can push this up to the top of the frame and have that bolt start poking through. And that bolt is going to poke through. So we have the bolt row that's there, skip one hole, and then next to that is where this bolt is going to be. And let me drive it just a little bit farther so you can see there. Once it's poking through, then you can just push up with the screwdriver as you screw on it. And you're just going to have to move the wrench to keep up with it as it moves down. Now I am going to try again with my drill here to see if I can speed it up a little bit. But you do want to be careful, obviously, when you're using the drill. If you don't get a good pressure on the bolt, it can cause the head to strip out, and then you might have to go to the hardware store and find a brand new replacement bolt. All right, let's try the, okay, so far so good. Now it's moving, now it gets harder. All right, we made it. That one's good. Oh man, and now the hard side. I think, where's the other bolt? Here it is. This is gonna be hard to get to with the battery mount here. That started. I think the best way to attack this is from the inside of the battery mount, maybe. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Okay, and once there's just a little bit poking out, I'm going to take it all the way to the top. So that we can push against the top frame here for a couple. All right. Let's try the drill, see if I can keep it on the nut on the inside. Close, I got most of the way. And there we go. All right. I expected that to be a little bit worse, but we made it. Okay, we have the two brackets that we just used before, and they're going to go on that wing nut and then sticking out towards the outside. And then the 2 bolts we just took out, I'm going to drop in the far side hole on both of those brackets. I'm going to drop in the far side hole. That would be right next to the bolt we put in. Perfect. And then we got to get 2 wing nuts and get that wing nut tightened down on the first one here. Okay, put that bolt back in, tighten the wing nut down. Okay, and then wing nut on this side too. All right, and then if you remember, our next step was to add some loops of tape to help us hold the bracket in place. Now this one, I'm a little worried about the electrical. If you can drill and screw in while you're holding the bumper in place here, that would be okay. I think I can't quite do it because of the electronic components that we have here. So instead, I will continue with the tape plan. All right, and we got to do both sides this time together. Okay, that loop was too big. Let's try again. All right, and the second loop here. Okay, that one looks good. Now, with this one, you might want to have a second person helping you. But the key is we need to get this lined up with the top of the bracket on both sides. Okay, and also, we want to get our wood centered between the 2 sides as well. If it's off a little bit, it's going to be okay. So that's why I'm trying to use the bumper bracket that I have here. This is why if you did the second L, it'd be maybe a little bit easier to see the center before we put it in. But let's see how that looks. I am even with the top of this bracket. I am nowhere close to even with the top of that bracket. That's about even. We're going to squeeze that on a lot, and I'm going to just kind of peek on this side for how much we're shifted with the wood. All right, that is too far away. So I'm having some pool noodles colliding on this side. I'm just going to shift it over towards me a little bit, though, because that's the direction it needs to be. And then we'll try squeezing that in again. And that feels closer. Essentially, when you have the other bracket on, you're just centering it. Otherwise, you're trying to get about that 3/4 of an inch of wood sticking off this side. Or we're just trying to get our pool noodles to be lined up on this edge. All right, I think that's pretty good. Let's get the wing nuts off so we can remove this bumper. There's 1 and 2. And gently, while holding the brackets, we'll try to lift it up and off. Good. And then back over to our little workspace over here. Let's go back to my drill bit for pilot holes. I believe it's a 7/64. Okay, and I'm going to do the same holes I did last time, so this one down here. That felt like the bracket might have moved a little bit. We'll find out if that's a problem or not when we go to reattach it to the frame of the robot. Okay. Here and here. All right, last one for this bracket. Around, we got our second bracket here to do. So again, go to this one. And it is like a little, right, the tape doesn't hold it perfectly, so, you know, if you feel it shifting around a little bit, that's probably happening. But the slot that the bolt goes into is a little bit oversized, so that's helping out with this style bracket that we sadly did not get for the side ones. All right, screw this screw in. And another one. Okay, and the last one, here we go. All right, those are all in and tight. So now I'm going to come back to attach this to the back of our robot here. And it looks like we kind of knew that there was going to be the fabric bundle and stuff here that was going to maybe stop it from going in nicely. I had to push in just a little bit to compress that noodle to get it to go. But now that is on. It's about level on this side. And for you, you should have had the other one mounted so you'd know it's level on that side as well. And then, let's see, both of my wing nuts are here. Let's go ahead and tighten those wing nuts back on to make sure this is going to be able to attach nicely. Yeah, that seems great. OK, so now I have two of my bumpers on. Hopefully you did your other L ahead of time and got that mounted. At which point, you got to take all the red bumpers off, do the same thing with your blue set of bumpers, and then actually take all of your blue bumpers off because we got to paint numbers on it. And I think we're going to use some spray paint, and that's going to be a whole lot less messy if we do it off the robot instead of trying to do it on the robot. So get your second set mounted, same way we did this set. And then get all the bumpers off, and you're ready for the next part. We're going to clean this up, come back, and start painting. All right, last step for the bumpers. We have to put team numbers on them. And I think the easiest way to do this is to paint them on. So we've got some spray paint. This is actually Flex Seal. It's like rubberized. I found that that sticks well to this fabric. But there are probably many other paints that are going to work just as well, and probably some that are a little bit cheaper. OK. Then the rules are we have to put numbers on all four sides of the robot. And there are some rules for what size the numbers have to be, like how tall they have to be, how wide the stroke is. But I found these templates or these stencils that we can use. So if we kind of put these together into the team number, I can just kind of tape them all together ahead of time. And then we can kind of measure to get the middle of the bumper, kind of hold it in place or tape it in place, spray paint that side on, move on to the back. We have to do it on all 4 sides, so we can move on to the back bumper, do the other side. But I think when we get to the front, our problem is this is not going to be wide enough to fit all 4 numbers. And certainly if you have a 5-number team, it's going to be even harder. So what we can do here is we can put 2 of the numbers on one side and then the other 2 numbers on the other side of the robot. So we'll kind of have it branching across these 2, where we can do, first 2 numbers, second 2 numbers on here. All right. And I've got, well, the other thing too to remember is these brackets, right, are lined up with the top of the bumpers. So it's really easy to get it flipped over and put your number on upside down. Don't do that. Make sure you have it in the right side up orientation. So this bracket should be right on the top edge, and all of the extra space is down towards the bottom. And then these side brackets are shifted towards the bottom of the bumper. All right. And same thing with the back bumper. We don't have the side brackets, but we do have the 2 angles, and they should be lined up more or less on the top of your bumper. All right. And of course, you will need to get numbers that match your team. Looks like from my stencils left over from last year, I had a lot of 5s, and I don't know if these are 6s or 9s, but I'm going to go ahead and be team 5599 this year. And the way I like to do this is, I guess we'll do the side and back first. I like to just kind of tape these all together so that instead of dealing with 4 different numbers that I have to put in place, I just have to deal with one big thing that we have to put in place. And this would help probably if I had a little bit of thinner tape to get the in-between going, but we'll go ahead and get some tape on here to start them together. One more set for the last number. Okay, and kind of while we're taping this together, I will mention there are some other options. There are adhesive numbers that you can get put on. But if you're using an iron-on or a well, maybe sewn on is okay, but for sure if you're using an iron-on one or one that needs heat, if you try to iron it on with the pool noodles behind it, you will melt the pool noodles. So in that case, you would have to take the fabric off. You could mark the position now, take the fabric off, and then go back together to tape those in place. That's why I think paint is a lot easier, because once we have it kind of together, we don't have to take it apart and redo everything. So I'm going to get just a little bit more tape in the middle just to make sure things don't shift on me. And then we need to kind of deal with the overspray or the excess that misses the template entirely. So I have a bunch of this, I don't know, just packing paper left over from shipments we've got for parts or whatever else have you. And we can use that. Looks like this one has some nice little perforated tear lines on it. But we can use that to kind of add an extra bit to the outside of our template here, just so that any extra spray isn't going to end up going where we don't want it to go. So if I take like a whole strip on the bottom here, we can then put that onto a piece of this paper. Do the same thing on the top. Just make sure it doesn't get into where the numbers are. And then let's grab a couple more of those because they're working well. And then we can get these for the sides. And if you don't have this paper, you could just use regular, printer paper, copy paper. You can use cardboard. Basically just anything to block off the area. All right, it looks like I was on a little bit of an angle here, so let me add some tape to cover up that crack that I left. All right, that looks good. Next step is, well, I've been shaking this can a bit as we've been getting ready, but shake well. Spray 8 to 12 inches from surface using an even sweeping motion. All right. So we'll make sure that is shaken well. And I'm going to grab the tape measure here. All right, so on the first one, our first bumper here, this is, and I guess it's kind of weird. Do we want it centered on the bumper or centered on the thing, right? Because remember, this is on the outside on the back. So that is actually what the full section looks like. So you could measure, including this extra bumper width on here if you wanted, to get the center of the side of your robot, which will put it off center on the bumper. Or if you prefer, you can get just the center of this bumper. And actually, there's no rule that says it has to be in the center. So if you want it shifted to one side, I think you're allowed to do that as well. But I guess you should double check the rules for that. So this is 30 inches long, it looks like, to the end of my fabric here. So I'm going to look to center it around 15. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm not going to worry too much about being very precise with where it ends up. But I'll kind of like line up the crack here with where my finger was, and then kind of move this one away from the other ones a little bit, but we can kind of line that up. We can double check now with the tape measure on top. Looks like I need to shift that way just a tiny bit to be at about 15 to the center of my numbers. Okay, and I find like for up and down, the bumpers are just starting to curve. So you can sort of see, where the ends would be compared to the edges of the bumper. And you can kind of feel that to get it to be nice and straight. All right, and then that's leaning there. As long as I'm careful and I don't bump it, I don't think I need to tape it to the bumper, but you do have the option of doing that. Instead of using all of this extra paper, you could tape it directly to the bumper. And then just lay something down on the other area as well to hold it in place. Okay, so now, I'm gonna put some gloves on because every time we do this, I get paint all over the place. And then we'll go ahead and give it a spray. One of the things though is, because it's curved and it's not sitting on flat, you will get maybe some leakage to the sides. If you used a thicker stencil, if you could find a stencil that has some width, that would also do a good job of making the paint go on a little bit cleaner to the numbers. But this should lead to legible numbers, and that's really what we're looking for. All right, so 8 to 12 inches, something like from here. And we're just going to kind of give it a nice coat everywhere, and then we might do a second coat if it doesn't look like it's on enough. All right, let's go ahead and spray. Let me shake it a little more. That looked watery. Let's do a quick test on some paper here. Yep, still looks a little watery, so I'm going to shake it a few more times. And that's coming out the way I would expect. All right, now we're ready. Let's go ahead and spray. Okay, that's a pretty thick but relatively even coat. Looks like I got a hair here. but we'll let that go. All right, so now, if I'm careful, we're going to lift this up and set it down. And you can see I overdid it a bit. We have some leak out in a few places. But this is OK. This is legal. It will work. Probably I should have sprayed less at a time and come back for a whole second coat, but I'm trying to make it work in one coat. All right, my bracket to the top, so this is up. So if I put it this way, then we want our numbers to match the way they did on the other one. OK. And you know what we should do before we start is do our best to wipe this off. So let me get some paper to protect the table here. So yeah, it looks like that there's just enough stuck around the sides and stuff that it's going to get onto the bumper before we even start spraying. So just going to get some paper towels or shop rags and do my best to kind of wipe up a lot of this paint. And I think with that mostly good, we want to get the back, though. That's the most important spot. That feels like more than I usually end up with on the back, but. All right, seems pretty good. Now we can bring it in. And again, this is the top. It's going to be somewhere around there. That was really close. All right, that's at about 15. Going to knock literally everything off the table as we're doing this. All right, that is feeling pretty even on the sides. Okay, so let's go ahead and spray this one. Okay, probably overdid it again, but you know, so it goes. You get this to set it down on once again. Okay, not looking too bad. So this will be this side of the robot. Cool. And we got the other one for the other side of the robot. Let's repeat that process here. Let's get this cleaned up again. Oops. As best we can. And you could pick up a second set of stencils too. So, you know, when one gets messed up to the point you don't want to use it anymore, you can swap over. You can also wait until the paint dries, and then you won't have to worry about sort of this extra contamination that's happening. But you also will have to do this twice for both sets of your bumpers. All right, bringing up the last one. Once again, this is the top side. Our angle brackets are attached to the top side. So I'm going to flip it this way. So it is once again the same sort of direction as it was the last few times. So we can make sure our things are right side up. And this one is 33.5 or so inches. So we're looking at 16 and a half, 16 and 3/4, I think is roughly the center. So again, we were pretty close, just eyeballing it. And then this one, because it's only sitting on the one set of brackets and I can't really turn it, it will be on a little bit of an angle. So we'll try to match that when we come into spray. All right, let's do it. Kind of hold this end. There we go. Now it's sitting flatter with just a little bit of pressure there. It's like just a touch more there. All right. All right, we way overdid it on this first 9 here. And partly maybe too because of that angle. But we can dab up a little bit of it, and mostly we just lost that little split in between here. But we'll let that go. All right, so these 3 are done. And we just need to wait for them to dry. Let's see if we can get away with. All right, I would recommend waiting for these to dry. And then once they're dry, we can come back and do the 2 numbers on the front of the bumper. All right, we've waited a bit for the paint to at least get tacky. It's probably not completely dry, but it's not going to run when I tip the bumpers over anymore. And so now we can go ahead and work on the front ones. I would say if it were your robot and you got like a meeting tomorrow or later in the week, you could let these completely dry and then move over and do the other side. Because I think if I do accidentally touch this, it will still smudge. All right, so our goal now is we have to kind of split this in half so that we can make our 55 for one half of our front section and our 99 for the other half. And I guess I could probably just peel all of this off and re-tape up new stuff, but I think I can just kind of, cut it in the middle here. Into 2 separate pieces. Looks good. And then we can grab a couple of new pieces to attach on the side. So we'll do just like before. Make sure it's not covering up the number at all. There is our 55. And then we've got our 99. All right, seems good. Now, in case some of that is still wet, let's make sure we arrange these the way that they're going to be. So we've got the 2 L sides together, angle brackets on the top, our inner brackets here on the side are towards the bottom. We definitely have a right side up 55.99 on that side and a right side up 55.99 on this side, which means then if I'm the front of the robot, right, we read left to right, so I think it's going to be 55 on this one and 99 on this one. And this is the top. Okay, so let's flip this one up. So this one is going to be the 55, which we've got here. Make sure it is facing the same way, so the tops of the 5s are towards the angle bracket. You can also look around the corner and make sure it's going the same way as the other numbers were. This one's really short, so I can just sort of feel where the edges are and try to make that gap about the same. You could get the tape measure out here again and tape it if you want it to be a little bit more precise. But let's go ahead and spray this one. All right, looks pretty good. Get that away. All right, we got our 55 looking good. I'm going to move that around here to the side. All right, and then this one is going to be our 99, or your second 2 digits. Obviously, you're making this for your team numbers. Okay, this time the top is this way. Let's make sure we do 9s and not 6s. And again, we can kind of feel where the edges are to center it as best we can. You can also kind of feel that gap in between the pool noodles, which kind of can help you align up and down as well. But this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and spray our last 2. So one more check. It is facing the right way. And let's go. All right. Carefully lift that up. And we'll check. So we got 99, and if we rotate it, 55.99. And again, if we look from the front of our robot, we're going to have 55.99. Good on that corner, good on that corner. All right. I am going to now let these set and dry completely. And that's what you should do as well. Once they're dried, then of course you can throw them on your robot. We do suggest having a set on once you get to the autonomous or teleop programming videos. So if the robot accidentally drives towards something and crashes into it, you're going to have the extra protection of the bumpers. Our next video, though, is going to be software setup and updating the firmware on all of our devices. The robot's not going to move for that, so if you still have the bumpers drying while you start working on that, that's fine. Just make sure you throw them on before the robot actually starts moving. All right, so our next video is going to be that software setup and firmware updates. We'll see you in that video. But before we go, another special thanks to Argosy, First, Aramco, and Team 302 Lake Orion High School for hosting our studio.